Listen.
Welcome to Real Deal, Real Deal, Real Deal, Real Deal, Real Deal. Joining me today are the happy pair. Welcome to Real Welcome to Real Deal. I am Brian Rose, and we are live here at London Real World headquarters to talk about numbers, because numbers don't lie. But unfortunately, oftentimes, politicians ignore the numbers, they ignore the science, they lock us down, and they ruin our economy in the process. Today in London, we've gone on Tier 2 lockdown, which means that you cannot any longer meet anyone outside your household, which means that the hospitality industry has been de facto closed, which means 120 billion pounds in revenue, 4.5 million jobs throughout the UK, if this continues countrywide, will be lost. This is major, and this is a problem. And today I want to talk about the numbers, because when you drill into the numbers that are thrown at us every single day, you're going to find a different story. And yet our politicians and our mainstream media use these numbers for their agenda. Now, I've always loved numbers. Ever since I was a little kid, and I did my science fairs when I was 10 years old in California. I love math, I love science, I love numbers. I was obsessed with it. I was that geeky kid in school, and I really went deep down the road of statistics, maths, and I was fortunate enough to go to the Massachusetts Institute of Technology in Cambridge, Massachusetts, where I got my degree in mechanical engineering. And I later used those scientific, mathematical, technical skills to go to Wall Street and trade derivatives. So this is something I know quite a lot about. And yet when I look at the numbers that you see being pushed to you on the front page of The Guardian, on the front page of The Sun, on your broadcast from your mainstream television media, even from our governments, I see a different picture. And let me just share with you on the screen right now a typical picture of something you might see on the newspaper or in the television. It's this really scary looking graph in black and red, and you see total cases, 654,000, total deaths, 43,000. You see these jagged numbers, and it's designed for one reason: to instill panic inside of you and to get you in a fear mindset to then follow the agenda of whatever comes next. This is classic. It's been used for centuries. But when you actually look into the numbers, you find a completely different story, and I want to talk about that today. Let me go on a little bit more about the Tier 2 lockdown, because this is a map of what the country looks like right now when it comes to cases per 100,000. And our good friends up in the north right now are experiencing some very high rates of infection, or according to the media, high rates of infection. And again, I want to drill into those numbers and find out what they really mean. But in places like Liverpool and in Manchester, we're seeing high numbers of cases per 100,000, and we're seeing a lot of action being taken. And I just want to give a shout out to our good friends Nick Whitcomb, who runs a gym in Liverpool, who has literally had armed police officers show up and fine them with thousands of pounds of fines. And Nick is trying to run his business. He's trying to keep his gym open to provide people mental health and physical health, and yet he's being shut down by the police because of the manipulation of these numbers. So I just, again, want to send out our support to Nick. He's kept his gym open, and I train every single day because I know it's part of my mental health and my physical health. They're directly linked. We've got to keep our gyms open. Ireland has kept their gyms open during lockdown, and we want to send our support out to Nick up the north and to a lot of the mayors up north that are fighting back against these government co-opted agendas when it comes to those numbers. And that's the mayor of Liverpool, the mayor of Manchester, the mayor of Sheffield, and many others. And today I really want to drill into these numbers and tell you what I think. But before that, I want to get your thoughts. We are live now on 4 different social media platforms, the ones that haven't banned us yet for speaking the truth. And I want to get your ideas right now. If you could please tell me, what is your single biggest challenge and frustration with the lockdown right now? That's what I want to know. Next thing I want to know is, do you think the lockdowns are justified? And finally, I want to know from you, do you think we need better leadership in this country and in your city? And again, if you're not in Britain, this applies to you even more so. In America, so many cities are being locked down in so many cities across the world, and we want to find solutions right now. So please leave me your comments. I'll be looking at them live throughout this broadcast and really be talking about what's going on here. So again, just to tell you, I'm Brian Rose from London Real, and this is the 6th live stream I've done in a series of me really looking into providing solutions to the crisis we face right now with the pandemic, with the lockdown, and with the total lack of leadership, a disproportionate response to the virus, and a complete lack of science-based decision-making. I've been frustrated. And the reason I'm frustrated is because I love London. I've lived in this city for over 20 years. I have my British citizenship, which I'm proud to have earned in 2007. And this city has given me so much. I worked for 11 years as a banker in the City of London. And then for 9 years, almost exactly to this month, 9 years ago, I started London Real. And I started broadcasting long-form conversations for free to the world to hopefully transform the world and give people information to empower them to live better lives, create better businesses, have better physical health, mental health, have better families and better communities. And so I'm really passionate about trying to get the correct information out there and empowering people to live the best lives possible. And that's why I'm speaking out about these things. And I've been talking very vocally about this for the past 4 to 5 weeks. And soon it became evident to me that no one was listening, and that these career politicians with these vested interests were going to continue to take these numbers, manipulate them, and push their agenda to you. And finally, it became obvious to me that I needed to do something about it. And so on Tuesday of this week, I announced that I will be running for mayor of London. And in May of 2021, I expect to move into City Hall and to finally change this agenda. I want to get London back to work. I want to put our health first. And I want to put science first when it comes to making the decisions that we do about the very bedrock of this country, which is our economy, which affects our livelihoods, which affects our mental health, and affects our physical health. And so these are policies I'm going to put into place, and together we can create change. And again, I want to be clear, I can't do this without you. It's going to take all of us working together to create these change. And, and I'm going to need your support. And this is a way that we can show the world, and we can show the politicians here that real change is needed, and we are going to show the world. We're going to shock the world with the way that we're going to be able to get science-based decisions back. We're going to get the economy back on track. We're going to get people back to work safely. We're going to protect the vulnerable, but we're not going to have a lot of the nonsense that we see happening out there today, and I really want to tell you exactly how we're going to do it. So let me jump into that. Again, if you're coming late, type into the chat right now, wherever you're watching this, what is the single biggest challenge you're currently facing when it comes to the lockdown? Are you frustrated? Why? Do you think we need the severity of the lockdown right now? 9 million citizens in London are now on Tier 2 lockdown, which means they can no longer go out and meet friends at pubs, bars, restaurants. They can no longer meet friends in their own house. They can no longer go to birthday parties. This is severely going to cramp the economy, the livelihood, and the mental health of this city. And we're seeing even higher lockdown tiers with our friends in the north. And it's very, very worrying, and I'm not satisfied with the decisions that they've made. So leave your comments. And I want to talk about some of the things that we're seeing regularly. And I want to put this on the screen right now. And this is a graph that you see almost every single day. And it's something that's actually published in the Guardian website every single day. And it's a list of 3 numbers. And I want you to really look at these numbers right now because they're very, very important. And these are numbers that, in my opinion, are constantly being manipulated and used to instill fear. So we go ahead and make decisions that aren't based in logic, that aren't based in science, and that are not proportional to the virus. That's what I'm talking about, or to the severity of the virus. And let's look at these numbers. And these are daily, as was published today. We have a daily cases of daily COVID cases. We are being told are 18,980 daily cases happening, which is up 1,440 from last week. Furthermore, 4,941 people are currently in hospital based on COVID symptoms, and a total daily deaths of 138 people that are COVID deaths. Now, if you drill into that number, you find that that is any death for someone that's tested positive for COVID in the last 28 days, with or without symptoms, whether they died from a car accident or from heart failure or from mental illness or smoking-related illness. It's still classified as a COVID death, and we're going to get into that number shortly. But these are the numbers that are being thrown at us constantly. The cases, the cases, the cases. And I want to drill down into that number right away and talk about the cases, because this is the number that's really directly affecting policy. And I want to talk about what really is a case. And so let me show you this figure that you see on screen right now. And again, this is the daily quote-unquote cases that we are being shown in the media But actually, that's not really what that number is. It's the total number of people that tested positive with the CPR COVID test. And I'm not going to get into the accuracy of the CPR test, the false positives, the false negatives, to the number of times that RNA strand is replicated in order to break through to a positive test, whether that's 40 times, 37 times, or 33 times. That's been talked about at length on my show. But let's go ahead and take this case, this number as a true, people testing positive. That does not equal people that have cases of COVID. It just means that you've tested positive for this RNA sequence. I want to make that very clear. But the most important number that you're going to see on the screen right now is the increase in the number of tests. Because if you look at the people testing positive, you'll see that this 18,900 is nearly 4 times the 5,000 cases per day that we saw on the first wave of the pandemic, where we saw many deaths, we saw the NHS, we were being told being put under strain, and now it seems like it's 4 times that number. But when you look at the number of tests being done, you can see that that's gone up dramatically since May and November. And it's gone from the May dates of somewhere around 50,000 cases per day, now up to almost 250,000 cases per day, tests per day. That's 4 and 5 times the amount. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know this. If you test more people, you're going to get more cases, period. And this is not shown to us as a percentage of population. It's just shown to us as the total number of people testing positive. And so this number is not put into context. And so by very definition, it is flawed and it is skewed, and you cannot compare it to a number that was happening in April or May. And yet that is the number that we see newspapers leading with, television channels leading with, and politicians leading with when they want to get your attention and they want to use it to hijack logic, hijack science, and change policy. This is a very, very, very important point, and we need to hold our politicians and our mainstream media to qualify this point when they put it out there. Because if you don't tell us there's been 4 times the number of tests, then you can't say, well, adjusted for the quantity of tests we are saying, the number is actually lower than back in May. But they don't say that. They throw a number of cases at you, which is actually the number of positive tests, which is not necessarily the number of cases, and then they try to instill panic, which is what they're doing right now in this country with this record number of positive tests. So again, it must be put in context. If you divide that by the number of tests being made 4 and 5 months ago, the number is actually not any bigger than where we were in the quote-unquote first wave. So that's the first point that I really want to make. I think it's a very, very important point to make. And again, all of my data is coming from the Office of National Statistics here in London. It's a government-regulated office, so these numbers you can look up right now on their website if you want to find out more about them. So again, I want to go to your comments right now, and I want you to tell me what's the single biggest frustration you're currently feeling with the lockdown. I also want to find out, do you think that the lockdown is justified? And I also want to know, do you think we need better leadership? And so I appreciate the comments coming through here. And again, I appreciate everybody putting things in here, what's happening. We've got a great comment on YouTube that says, we totally need new leadership. Our country is being run into the ground. I appreciate that. Right now, there's some great comments coming on here, and I appreciate what's happening right now. We've got Giota on YouTube that says, Brian, I'm scared. I don't want any lockdowns. It affects my mental health. What is this? This is not humane. And I really appreciate your comment, Giota, and we're hearing this from so many people. You know, it's one thing to talk about the economy, and I want to talk about that. But the economy affects our mental health, and the economy also affects our physical health. But these are lagging indicators. It will take us months and even years to feel the effects, and our politicians aren't talking about this, and we're not really being aware of this. And this is something I'm talking about, and that's why I have my Health First policy as your next mayor of London, where we're going to be talking about the physical health of our citizens, the mental health of our citizens, and also how we can get London back to work, which is so crucial when it comes to our mental health. So thank you for that comment. And again, I was speaking with Steve McNamara, who runs one of the largest taxi cab unions here in London, and he said, Brian, you don't understand the mental health troubles that these drivers are having, all alone on the roads, no one to talk to, the revenues are down 60%. It's a real issue, and it's something that I'm going to be very serious about when I'm elected the next mayor. Some other great comments is happening here. Marissa on IG says, your awakening is our alarm clock. I appreciate that. And again, I'm just coming from this from someone who's concerned, who's passionate about this city, and who knows London can do better. We are, in my opinion, the greatest city in the world. We have the greatest spirit, the greatest resolve, the greatest fortitude. We have that indomitable spirit that Winston Churchill spoke of, and I want to see us on top. I think we could lead the world in a science-based approach, in a proportional response to the virus, in getting our city back to work if we just had better leadership. And I'll talk about what we can do in London shortly. Some other comments coming here, which is great. Emma Govender on Instagram says, yes, we need better leadership. Be the new Mayor Brian. I appreciate you, Emma, very much. And look, I just want to be someone who is there to listen to you, and I want to serve. That's it. My job as Mayor of London is to serve the 9 million people, not to serve my own agenda and not to serve my own career. And that's what I'm seeing happening in these politicians, and it really frustrates me. And we've got Randall Cromer here on YouTube that says, God bless, and I hope you win. No lockdown. I need a job and not a government handout, and I really appreciate that as well. I am not about handouts, because handouts actually disempower people, because all they want is another handout. I want to get London back to work and provide people out there the entrepreneurial opportunities to get out there and create businesses and create ideas. And that's why I want to drill into these numbers, because they are not what you think they are. And I want to propose that we should not be on lockdown here in London. We should not be using fear. We should be encouraging people to come back to the city, to go into the offices. We would need tourists to come back into the city, first from the United Kingdom and later from overseas. We need to get our theaters back, our hospitality sectors back and running, and our companies innovating again so we can lead the world. Now, I want to make our second point, and I want to go back to the same graph that you see every single day pushed in front of your face and brandied about on all of our different social media platforms. And again, this is the cases, the hospitalization rates, and of course the unfortunate deaths that we're seeing happening here that are attributed to COVID. But I want to drill into these numbers again. So again, let's look at the top line numbers. We see 18,980 cases, which is not that actually is positive tests. And that's based on a 5x increase in tests from April. So let's keep that in mind. Next, we are seeing that number, which is 4,941 people in hospitals. Now that seems like a lot of people, especially when it's up 1,500 people on last week and up 2,000 on the previous week. But let's actually drill into that number, because that's something that's just not being done. And when we go into the Office of National Statistics and we actually look at that number, let's look into it and look at what it really is. And let's look at that healthcare number, and there's a great graph on the screen right now. And we see 4,941 patients in hospital, but we also see the true number, which is this: only 563 patients in ventilator beds. Only 563. So that's just over 10% of those people in hospital are in serious enough condition to put them in a ventilator bed. And if you look at the graph down at the bottom, you'll see that is much, much, much lower than back in April, where you saw those numbers peaking at 4,000 people in these ventilator beds. And so again, the government is pushing a number on you of nearly 20,000 people with cases, 4 times that as big as the first wave. But when you drill down into that number of people actually in serious condition in ventilator beds, it's significantly smaller than the first wave. Significantly smaller. This is why you need to be informed as a consumer of the media, as someone who can vote in this country and in the city you're in around the world. You need to understand the real numbers, and you need to hold your politicians and your mainstream media outlets to justify their policies and opinions based on these numbers. So again, I want to repeat that. When you see a number like 5,000 people are currently in hospital due to COVID, again, which just means COVID symptoms, might not even be a positive test, or a positive test, it doesn't mean that they are suffering or that they are in danger of losing their life, because just over 10% of those people are actually in ventilator beds. So again, it's all about drilling into these numbers and making sure that you understand them and they're not being co-opted for someone else's agenda, because that's actually what's happening here in London. And I want to talk more about why the Mayor of London has been on a crusade to get this city locked down. He's literally been begging and predicting that we are going to be locked down. He's also promised that all of the boroughs of London are going to be locked down together, because he thinks we should all go as one. All go as one into bankruptcy is what he wants. All go as one into mental health problems. All go as one into a situation where we're not going to be able to come out of this for a long time. And that's what frustrates me, because he uses those numbers to do that. But if we drill into these numbers, we can find out exactly what they mean. So I want to get your thoughts here and find out from you, what is the single biggest frustration that you're finding right now when it comes to the lockdown? I also want to know, do you think these lockdowns are justified? Do you think it's worth having all of our hospitality sector shut down, which, by the way, is responsible for 120 billion pounds of revenue in this country, 4.5 million jobs, nearly 15% of the workforce. And by the way, according to Public Health England's own data, only 3.3% of COVID transmissions is happening in the hospitality sector. And yet, your mayor of London has shut the entire thing down by crusading for, by lobbying for, by begging for a Tier 2 lockdown, and he wants to take it to Tier 3 and make it even worse. And yet the science shows that these are some of the cleanest, safest places that you can be in the entire country right now. These are venues that spend their entire point of being keeping you safe, your food safe, clean and cleanliness. They've adopted all of the protocols. They've got one-way systems. They've got contactless payments. They've got staff wearing masks, and yet we've shut them down, and we're going to decimate our economy on the back of that and the back of lack of science and lack of numbers. So again, I want to go to your feedback and get some of your comments right now. Whatever platform you're watching this, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, please tell me right now and give me your feedback and tell me, what is your single biggest frustration when it comes to the lockdown? Do you think it's justified? And do you think we need better leadership? And look, I really appreciate the comments here. There's some great things going on here. I've got a great comment from YouTube that says, quote, "All lies, nothing to do with health whatsoever. When had they ever cared about our health? They would have banned smoking years ago if they cared." What a great comment from Cider Guy on YouTube. And he's got a great point there. You know, with smoking-related illnesses, we are seeing sometimes 10 times the number of deaths from smoking-related illnesses, and yet we don't see a lockdown of tobacco stores, because if the government really cared about that, then they would do that. Again, this is their agenda, co-opting our livelihoods. Some other great support coming from YouTube. Someone says, "We need Brian Rose as Mayor of London." I really appreciate that. And again, my job is to serve the citizens of London, period. It's not to bring an agenda. It's not to get me reelected. It's to listen to you and enact policies. But I believe we need to get London back to work. We need to put science first. We need to put your health first, more important than anything. Connie Doblin on YouTube says, "Brian, your passion is inspiring. I hope you win in 2021. Thank you very much. We'll do this together." And Richard Wilson also said on YouTube that you've got my vote. I really appreciate that as well. I really get that. And also, Pascu Dragos on YouTube says that, quote, "My biggest challenge and frustration is the fact that we are getting censored. Even though one can only do so much in such a global situation, I truly believe we should be allowed to speak our minds." And Pascu, I really appreciate your thoughts there. If you've been watching London Real for the past 7 months, we have been in a battle with censorship against all of our social media platforms. We have been deplatformed, banned pretty much from every single platform. YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We've all been put on hold, temporary hold, had content banned. It's been a real struggle, all for speaking the truth. Some of our guests on our platforms actually spoke the truth and made better predictions than Imperial College estimates that ended up locking our economy down. So I appreciate your support, and I appreciate the feedback here. All right, next I want to get to my third and final point before I talk about the case study happening here in London. And that is the third component of these numbers that we see, again, brandied about every day. They're forced in front of our faces as if it's clickbait to get us to make decisions out of fear. And that's when our mainstream media wins and our politicians win, when they get you scared and they use these numbers to manipulate your emotions and get you to do things that don't make sense. They're not science-based, and they're not a proportional response to the virus. So again, if you look at the screen here now, you'll see the three numbers that The Guardian loves to show you every single day. It's on their panel, and they stick it in front of your faces, which is total cases, which we've already shown does not reflect the fact that we are testing 4 and 5 times the amount that we did in our first wave. And also, these are positive tests. They don't mean cases. The second number you'll see, which is hospitalizations, which do not reflect the number of people in ventilator beds under serious condition. And finally, you'll see the number of deaths. And I want to drill into this number as well. And before we do that and show you this number, I want to say that every death is a tragedy, and we should try to prevent it. But I'll also say that every day in this country, there's a certain number of people that die, and it's actually quite a statistical average. They die from smoking-related illnesses, from Alzheimer's and dementia, from heart disease, from all traffic accidents, from all of these things combined. And so when people put this number in front of your face, it's important that we understand this number relative to COVID deaths and relative to also the general death rate that happens every single day. And so when you look at this number and really drill down into the number of deaths, it's 138. And I want to say two things about that number. First of all, you can say that is significantly lower than in the first wave that we saw in March and April, when that number was topping 800, 900 deaths per day. So it's significantly lower. Also, that number is any death with someone that had tested positive for COVID in 28 days. And again, you know, I'm not trying to be dramatic here, but that is for someone that was in a car accident that tested positive for COVID. That's someone that was actually had a heart attack that was tested positive for COVID. So we need to really qualify those numbers and really understand what they are. Again, they're not what they say they are, and they're not at the all-time highs that we're seeing. So again, I want to go back to your comments and get your feedback. What is frustrating you right now with this current lockdown situation? Do you think the lockdown is justified? And finally, do you think we need better leadership in this country? And it's something we really need to talk about. And actually, I want to place one more graph on the screen right now, and I really want to show you a number that's really, really, really important. And if you put this graph on the screen right now, you will see one number that's very, very powerful, and that is this. 3 deaths occurred in London yesterday that were COVID related. 3. And you can see the numbers here. You can go run these numbers yourself on the national statistics. 3 deaths. And while every death is a tragedy, 9 million citizens in this city are currently being locked down because of that number. 9 million citizens, and they're being co-opted for a mayor who has an agenda to lock down the city, has been literally crusading for a lockdown, and I'll explain exactly why later. So let me go to your comments here and find out what is your single biggest frustration when it comes to this. And again, what are your thoughts on this lockdown? Do you think it's justified or embedded? And some great comments coming in here, and I really appreciate you engaging with me. Stefan on Instagram says, economic damage is tremendous, yet government speaks very little of it. Exactly. They're pushing this down the line. It's going to take us years to recover from this economic damage. And Stefan, I appreciate you bringing that up. We've got Iobed on Instagram that says the lockdown is not about healthcare, but about censorship and control. And look, we've been victims here of censorship for many, many months. At first, I didn't understand it, but now I'm starting to see that censorship is used when it goes against someone else's agenda for your brain power and your emotions. And so that's a very, very astute comment. And finally, Michael on YouTube says, because of lockdowns, there are going to be more people dying and suffering than coronavirus patients. Drinking, smoking, mental issues, fast food. Again, these things are not being spoken about. And that's why Health First is one of my most powerful agendas. That's what I'm really going to be pushing here. Getting our citizens healthy, robust, and resilient to where we can survive anything the world throws at us. There's really powerful stuff in here. And again, Catherine on Instagram is saying mental health services are minimal due to year-on-year cuts. No funding to help the vulnerable, which makes us think that they are protecting the people. The science does not add up. I appreciate that. And finally, Elizabeth on Instagram says, Brian, you've had all the right people on the show to educate yourself, to educate us and yourself. Good job. And thank you, Elizabeth. We've been blessed between London Real and the Digital Freedom Platform to have the best scientists in the world, the best doctors and nurses, Nobel Prize winners, professors emeritus at universities like MIT. We've had 4-star generals. We've had the most credible people in here talking about the science, and that's why I'm fortunate to be so educated with what's going on today. And so I want to wrap this all up by saying, how is this science being co-opted, and how is this math being co-opted for the agenda? And the problem is this. It's having real-world implications, and I'm talking about London. Because today, we went on Tier 2 lockdown, and the mayor of London, who is appointed to serve the 9 million citizens here, to look after your interests and my interests, to look after our livelihoods, to look after our families, to look after our mental health, to look after our physical health, that man has been lobbying, crusading for a lockdown. And it made me actually wonder why. But before we go there, let's look into the numbers and let's look at the infection rates of all the boroughs here in London. And when you look at them, first of all, you'll see that they massively vary all over the place. And you'll see in certain sectors in red, there are over 100 cases per 100,000. But in many of those sectors, they are between 60 and 80 south of the river. It makes no sense for us all to go as one. No sense. You could easily keep everyone south of the river not on lockdown and lock down the areas that needed it. But no, that would not work for the agenda of the current mayor, because the mayor wants us all to go together and he wants us all to go into bankruptcy together. And honestly, I spent weeks trying to figure out why the mayor that's elected to a city to look out for the interests of our city, like the mayors of the mayors of Liverpool are, the mayors of Manchester are, the mayors of Sheffield right now are taking the government to court to fight lockdown measures because they are trying to protect the jobs of their citizens, to keep gyms open, to keep hospitality venues open, to keep pubs open. Why is the mayor of London trying to shut our city down? And it took me weeks to try to figure this out, but now I understand it. Because this is the scenario that's going to happen. The mayor shuts the city down, which he's already been successful in doing. None of us can meet. Hospitality sector has been crushed by this action alone. What happens next year is this. The city goes bankrupt. The mayor says the government didn't act early enough, like I told you to, and he asks for yet another government taxpayer-funded bailout. And if you think I'm crazy, just today, he was given another £1 billion bailout to bail out the TfL, which is Transport for London, which is an entire transportation service that through his mismanagement and fiscal irresponsibility and lack of accountability, he has run into the ground. So he's just been approved another £1 billion. That's after the £5 billion he's already asked for, and that's after the £20 billion that he's already asked for subsidized housing. And so this, unfortunately, is the agenda of our leaders. These are our leaders that have vested interests. These are our leaders that are failing us every single day. And it's very disappointing to me. It really is disappointing because, again, we see a disproportionate response to the virus. We see a complete lack of science-based decision-making. And you can see by the videos I post every day that I'm frustrated. I am just completely frustrated. My hands are up in the air because it just doesn't make logical sense. It doesn't make mathematical sense. It doesn't make scientific sense to lock the city of London down for an average number of 100 cases per 100,000. When you drill into the numbers, you drill into the hospitalizations, you drill into the deaths every single day, it does not justify closing down 9 million people, crushing their livelihoods, crushing the economy, crushing our mental and physical health. This is going to have long-term ramifications, and it's being done for one reason. So one man can get reelected in May and point the finger at the national government and ask you and your tax pounds to bail him out once again, and once again. And in my book, if you're a leader, you take ownership. You take ownership for your mistakes, you take ownership for your successes, and you say, guess what? This was my fault, that I've been on watch here for 4.5 years, and I'm going to find a solution. You don't point the finger at other people. That's Leadership 101. And so I want you all to understand the numbers here. The more you understand, the more you can be empowered, and you can hold your politicians to task and say, Mayor of London, how can you justify this lockdown when the numbers actually say this? Prime Minister, how can you justify locking down our friends in the north when the numbers actually say this? These numbers are being used as weapons against us every day. They use fear in your brain to get you to co-opt into an agenda that's going to bankrupt you, it's going to bankrupt your families and bankrupt this country, and I can no longer stand by and watch this happen, which is why I've decided to run for mayor of London. And let me just be honest with you right now and tell you, this is the last thing I ever wanted to do, was run for political office. And honestly, it's the worst thing I could ever do for London Real right now. London Real is growing exponentially. My academy needs me. I teach people from all around the world. We are streaming incredible content every day. Our numbers have never been bigger, and my community needs me more than ever to keep putting out this content. But the truth is, I cannot sit by and watch these politicians in this city run the city I love, the city that's been so good to me, into the ground. I can't sit by, and I could never live with myself if 5 years from now I look back and said, you know what, Brian, you could have made a difference. You could have put yourself out there. And so that's why I've decided to run for mayor and put myself out there. And I'm expecting a massive amount of criticism. I'm expecting the mainstream media to come after us as an independent media channel. I'm expecting them to try to pigeonhole me with all of the different guests that we've had on and say, oh, you're like that guest, you're like that guest. And they don't understand this is a media platform where we invite ideas of all kind because we believe in free speech. They're going to say, what's an American going to do as mayor of London? You know, that doesn't seem very British. And I'm going to tell them that this city was built on people from different nations, from the Celts to the Vikings, to the Normans, to all the people that came to this country and made it great. And some great leaders in this country have been American or half American, from Winston Churchill being half American to even Boris Johnson being born in America. They'll soon realize that that's a terrible argument as well. And finally, they'll say, Brian, you have no political experience. And the truth is, that's the greatest thing they could ever say, because it's politicians and their agendas and their wish to be reelected. And the problem they have is, for them, they only have so many tools. In this case, our mayor has one tool: lockdown. And when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And that's the only tool he has to fix the problems. But I don't. I see 100 different tools that we can use as a community to fix all the problems we have in London. And I think my background as an entrepreneur is going to make London a world-class city once again. But I also want to be clear, it's not going to be easy, and I can't do it alone. It's going to take all of us working together. It's going to take you making sacrifices in your city, with your family, with your community. It's going to mean you're going to have to step up and lead and make difficult decisions and work extra hard. But I know that we can pool the spirit and the knowledge and the innovation of this incredible city and the 9 million people we have here, and we can show the world what greatness looks like. We can lead the world when it comes to how to bring our theaters back, how to bring our cinemas back, how to bring our hospitalities back, how to bring our office workers back to this city, how to bring our transport infrastructure back, how to be healthier, how to be stronger, how to be more digital, and how to promote free speech. I think we can be a world-class city when it comes to that. I know we can. And it's just about us coming together and showing these politicians and elected leaders that there is another way, and that we are no longer going to take their agendas. We are going to move forward with science-based decisions, a proportionate response to the virus, and leadership first. So I appreciate the time here today. I appreciate your thoughts. If this resonated with you, please leave a comment below. I will go through these comments. I tried to read everything out there. Please share this video with all of your platforms. I think it's really, really, really important. And again, you can show your support and go to brianformayor.london and show your support. Again, we've got 7 months left. I really need your support. And again, we are going to do this together. We are all going to run for mayor together, and it's going to be a collective. But I am confident that we can change this city. I honestly think we can change it fast. We can get London back to work within weeks and within months. We can change our spirit. We can remove the fear, and we can show the world what makes London great, what makes Britain great. And I think the world will follow from our example. So no matter what city you're in from around the world, by supporting us here in London, I believe you can enact change in your city and in your country around the world. Just say, hey, look what they're doing in London. Why don't we do what they do? They are showing us what we can do. And I am optimistic. I really am optimistic. So again, thank you for your support. Please visit our website, share this video, follow me on our social programs, share this video with your friends and family, have a discussion with them and say, you know what, just listen to some of the points. Look at the numbers, look at the science, and have a debate. And again, don't take my word for it. Listen to all points of view and make your decision. That's what we want here. That's what free speech is all about. So thank you so much. I look forward to being your next mayor of London. I'm confident in May we can start to make changes and we can take this city in a new direction and make London world class once again. I'll see you next week on Real Deal. Thank you very much. At London Real, we believe that individual transformation can change the world. Join us and start your journey today.